Hi, I'm Daniel Gold, and welcome to another episode of the Gold Standard Leadership Lab. By day, I'm a partner at a leading advisory firm, where I draw upon my background as an attorney to help my clients succeed. This podcast, though, is my personal project, completely separate and apart from my day job, yet driven by the same passion that I bring to everything that I do. Teaching, mentoring, and sharing simple, impactful lessons that you can put into action. It is my hope that you'll walk away with practical takeaways to help you on your leadership journey. Thanks for being a part of this community and for joining me in the Leadership Lab. Let's get started. You should quit. Let's walk through a few cliche statements that are cliche because, well, they're true. People don't leave their company, they leave their boss. If you're going to leave all that you know, then my suggestion is to run towards something new, challenging, and exciting. Don't just run away from where you are. I have repeated both of these to colleagues in my own career, and frankly, I have been told the same throughout my own career over the last 20 plus years. They sound like platitudes, but they carry a very deep truth. Look, quitting involves a lot of work. And if you are a leader, you have likely invested years in your organization. You have likely built political capital. You have a reputation. You have earned respect. That is, unless you are one of those leaders who mistreats people, in which case I suggest you go back and read the full catalog of the Gold Standard Leadership Lab posts. But if you're not, then you probably feel the tension between your head and your heart. And that tension is what I want to speak into today. Let's talk a little bit about why leaders even think about quitting. Leaders do not wake up one day and just decide to quit on a whim. The decision brews for months, sometimes for years, and it usually starts with one of the following three paths. The first one is probably a life change. Your partner or spouse has a new opportunity that requires relocation. And frankly, your personal life must come first. The second, a growth opportunity. A new role comes out of nowhere that accelerates your career and pays what you've been working toward for years. But the third is what I call systematic resistance. And despite doing everything that you know, building processes, fostering candor, and encouraging psychological safety, the culture, the politics, or leadership above you still negates your progress. And that third one, well, that's the hardest one. Because it is not about geography or money. It's about realizing that your leadership cannot flourish where you are, no matter how hard you try. And so let's talk about when leadership styles collide. Because I lived this. I once reported directly to an executive who shared the same goal as me: increase profitability, improve EBITDA, land new logos, and drive operational efficiency. And on paper, well, we were 100% aligned. But in practice, our leadership styles were worlds apart. My approach was what you see here on the Gold Standard Leadership Lab, creating a ripple effect of positivity, empowering people to succeed, allowing mistakes in the name of growth, and building a virtuous cycle of trust and learning. But his approach was in conflict, confrontation, and power through fear. Every time I built momentum, his way of working undercut it. An individual contributor caught in the middle will always side with the louder, more senior voice. The result? My team felt whiplash. Clients felt inconsistency. And the same goals we both cared about slipped further out of reach. And at some point, I had to face the reality. Even though I had transformed my team and created real wins for our clients, I was waking up every morning sick to my stomach from the emotional stress. The very energy I needed to lead had been drained before the workday had even begun. And that was the moment I knew it was time to quit. Let's talk about another cliche. The grass is not always greener. And here is where many leaders, unfortunately, make a mistake. They confuse the pain of today with the promise of tomorrow. They assume that leaving will automatically solve all of their problems. But you know what? It rarely ever works that way. The grass is not always greener on the other side. It is just different grass. If you run away too quickly, you risk landing in the same situation but faster. A new logo, a bigger paycheck, or a better title will not erase a toxic culture or a misaligned boss. And here's the thing, without proper due diligence, you may find yourself wishing you had never left. But the cliche holds. Don't just run away, run toward. That means taking time to research the next opportunity, ask challenging questions about culture, about leadership style, values and practice, not just on paper. Also, talk to future peers, not just the hiring executive. Study turnover patterns. The data exists. You should ask for it. The exit door is not an escape hatch. It should be an intentional entry into a place where your leadership can thrive. Another cliche that is also true is control what you can. Here's the other side of the equation. Sometimes leaders quit too soon because they focus on not what they control, but what they can't. Look, every organization has dysfunction. Every system has bureaucracy, and if you spend your energy on what is broken far above your pay grade, well, you will drain yourself into negativity, and that is a loss. It is a loss for you, it is a loss for your team, it is a loss for your clients. The better path is to focus on what you can control: your team, your clients, your own daily habits. When you invest in these areas, you create incremental gains, invisible wins. You change the orbit for the people closest to you. And that counts for something. That kind of progress compounds even in imperfect conditions. But here's the key. If the things you can control are materially blocked by the things that you cannot, then it is time to reassess. Let me say this again. If the things that you can control are materially blocked by the things that you cannot, then it is time to reassess. When your wins keep getting erased, your team keeps getting undermined, and your energy is spent fighting uphill battles with no chance of reprieve, well, then you have your signal. So with that all being said, let's talk about why quitting can actually be the most courageous move you've ever made. Look, we all glorify perseverance. As leaders, we hustle, we grind, and we persevere. We preach grit. But sometimes perseverance is just another word for complacency. If you have tried everything, you've built psychological safety, you have modeled candor, you have created systems of empowerment, and you still cannot move the needle because of the structure, the politics, or the culture refuses to budge, then staying is not loyalty. It is slow erosion. Complacency is the opposite of leadership. It is the opposite of making an impact. And in those situations, choosing to quit is not failure. That's clarity. This is also very science-backed as well. Research supports it. Now, we've talked many times on the Gold Standard Leadership Lab about Amy Edmondson's studies on psychological safety. She says that teams that suppress error reporting and learning is really obviously very bad. And because if your system punishes candor innovation will actually suffocate. Another author and researcher, David Rock, has something called the SCARF model. And the SCARF model reminds us that when people feel threats to their status, the S, certainty, the C, autonomy, the A, relatedness, the R, or fairness, the F, SCARF, the brains go into defense mode instead of discovery mode. And if leadership above you constantly triggers threat responses, your best efforts will not matter. Burnout research also proves that chronic exhaustion and cynicism reduce both performance as well as health. Look, if you are like me, and you have these bouts where you wake up physically ill because of work stress, that's not a signal to push harder. I've been there. And it is a signal to step back. In other words, if your leadership environment keeps you in defense mode, that's not sustainable. So here's a personal test I'm going to give you, as I've given myself before. The first, do a mission check. I'd like you to write down the outcomes you owe your team and your clients. Now, write down the blockers that are outside of your control. And if the blockers outweigh your mission, I need you to pay attention to that. I need you to write that down. I need you to journal that and come back to that. Because the second one is an energy audit. Notice your mornings. Do you wake up excited to get out of bed? You're energized, or do you wake up exhausted and depleted? Because interestingly enough, the science also shows that your body often knows before your mind that you are exhausted. You are mentally exhausted from it. Number 3, do an impact review. List the initiatives that you have pushed in the last 6 months. Which one of those advanced? Which one of those stalled due to internal politics, vetoes, or just frankly indifference? Because if the stalled list dominates, you have data that matters. Next, look at your team health. Look at your people. Are they engaged? Are they learning? Are they thriving? Or are they cynical? Are they silent? Are they stuck? If they are stuck despite your best efforts, the system is much stronger than you are. And then it's time to do a gut check. Listen to your inner voice. Review your notes that you journaled from what I just mentioned a moment ago. Again, your gut is often your best read on when the equation no longer adds up. If 2 or more of the checks point toward decline, it is time to prepare your exit. It is time to quit. Running toward something new, that's what you need to do. Because quitting must mean moving toward something. That could be a role that stretches you, a mission that excites you, a culture that better aligns and matches your values. Or simply the next chapter of reinvention you're ready to write. Running away keeps you in survival mode. Running towards something new, that unlocks leadership growth. If you decide to quit, I'd like you to do it as a leader. I'd like you to communicate with gratitude and leave bridges intact, not burned. I'd like you to protect your people. You worked hard with them. Document your wins, your processes, and lessons so your team is not stranded. And I'd like you to be honest with yourself. Capture what you tried, what worked, and importantly, what failed. This isn't just an exit, it's a lesson for your next chapter. Your departure should leave others stronger and not weaker. Let me end how I started and say maybe you should quit. Not because you are weak, not because you are afraid, but because you refuse to be complacent. Quitting is not the opposite of perseverance. Quitting, when done with clarity and courage, is the next chapter of leadership. So ask yourself the test questions. Focus on what you control. Investigate whether the grass is truly greener. And when the answer is clear, choose the path that keeps you and your people thriving. And remember, leadership isn't about perfection. It is about progress. Take this lesson, put it into action, and continue setting the gold standard in your own life and at work. See you all next time.